Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. And today you're in for a real treat because I'm in for a real treat. We have Dheeraj Thimmaiah. Dheeraj is a AB InBev employee and has been working in and around the company for a long time. Was instrumental as part of the team that helped develop Brew Right, knows data, works with data, and talks data as well as anyone I know. So, Dheeraj, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
Thank you, Tom. Happy to be here.
Dheeraj, could you tell us a little bit about your professional background and what your current role is?
Yes, Tom. Thank you. So I started off my career very much in analytics and in the forensic and fraud space. But it all started back when I was in EY in 2011. And looking back now, it was very different to where we are today and how people are talking about data today and using data today. Back in the day when I started my career, we were still basically getting data in Excel files, mainly focused on travel and entertainment, and we were writing SQL queries and building dashboards, and mainly Tableau. And we were really interacting with a lot of the clients there and giving them to internal audit teams to do selection. And this was the transition where people went from doing audits from like top 10 by risky, by highest dollar value or more frequencies to just using a risk-based approach. But fast forward from where I started my career, 8.5 years of great work in EY, and part of my last few years at EY, I was actually working on the AB InBev account to actually build what is Brew Right today. And come in-house to really focus on Brew Right. Two important factors of what I did when I came in-house is really build user adoption. And the second piece of what I really did is build Brew Right to be very sustainable and reusable for the future. Because part of any technology tool, you want it in the future to be less human intensive and more automatized. And after that, you can really focus on user adoption. Because as we all very well know, you can have the shiniest of toy, but if you don't have anybody using it, it doesn't really add any value to the company. So in ABI, that's kind of what I really do. And I've also started increasing my portfolio in the legal space and not only in compliance now. And what that really means is getting in and working with lawyers in technologies like contract lifecycle management, e-billing platform for law firms and in-house teams. So it's been definitely an exciting journey as the organization itself looks into different areas to transform itself in a digitized way.
What's your current title?
My current title is Global Director of Compliance Analytics. I don't let the compliance hold me back here, so I definitely focus on the larger scope in legal.
I am so glad you mentioned user experience because I have come around to thinking that may be the key element in any compliance. And so I'm a lawyer by professional training, and I will have to tell you that user experience was not high on the law department's list of priorities. So it's been a journey for me. And I've taken courses in design thinking, and I've worked in other disciplines or other process disciplines to understand business processes, but it all seems to turn on exactly what you said. You used the word user, and to me, that's maybe the most important because, as you said, it doesn't matter how cool it is, it doesn't matter how good it looks, it doesn't matter how great it is. If there's not user adoption, it's not going to be a utilized business tool. And so maybe I could start with that, having that goal literally from when you started your work around Brew Right. How did you work with the users to help give them tools that they could use, yet met the requirements of, at first, the Department of Justice, and now the internal data analytics that you lead at AB InBev?
So I think the first and foremost is to really understand who your target audience is. And for us, it was very clear when we started off, our first target group of audience were our compliance users within the zone. And we're talking about day-to-day compliance officers who are managers, not really senior leaders of the company, but day-to-day compliance managers. And if we wanted to really work with them, the first piece of it is not selling them the tool, but seeing if they are prepared from a mindset perspective to move to a data-driven compliance. And why do I say that? Before COVID, the fact of people talking about data, analytics, AI, all of this was there, but in smaller fractions as what you hear now. And now ChatGPT is the new hot topic everybody's talking about. Going back to mindset, the first thing we wanted to see is how do we slowly introduce them to the concept of data-driven. And I think what I like to bring from a similarity perspective is if you look at traditional compliance, say investigations, how did investigations come along? Normally people call a hotline, it gets into a queue, and an investigator in a particular region picks it up and starts working from what it is. We look at risk monitoring very much the same way, but the risk is sourced in a different way. Nobody's calling you and basically saying this is coming through a queue and you have to, but we basically prioritize it through risk score. So we needed to really work with them to talk to them, and you're doing similar work, but the difference is the investigations is very reactive, and what you're here is doing a proactive and preventive work, which is you're identifying your own risks and you're helping basically mitigate it even before the problem becomes very big. And that's what we did. We started slowly changing mindsets to increase adoption. And the second thing we did in the journey is people want to be part of the end product. Nobody wants a final product handed over to them and being told, use it. But what we did with that is once we kind of changed mindsets, we kind of worked with them to really involve them in how we run our analytics, what type of risks we're looking for, how is the visualizations going to be looking for, what type of data we want to basically capture as feedback. So we started involving them in the technical processes of the maturity of the tool and even the evolution of the tool. Because at the end, everybody wants to be part of the end product. So getting them involved in the very journey and having them as users was also a very big plus for us.
The business rationalization that we are required to put forward when we want to bring a third-party agent or other third party into a business relationship with a company. That could be a sales agent, it could be a vendor, it could be a different type of relation, but there must be a business reason to do. Did the users at ABM, did they require you to show them a business rationalization for this tool beyond simply, oh, we have to do it? And was that part of how you were able to make this mindset shift?
Yeah. So I think a lot of the use cases of getting the data analytics tool ingrained in the company's culture happened a little before I actually joined the company in 2016 when the company was actually buying SAB Miller. And part of that transaction, it was very clear that the company's size required a more proactive way of identifying risks. So that particular journey had already started much before I came in. But what we did is we took that journey and amplified it and said, okay, going forward, this is the path that we need to go. And COVID helped amplify that for us because when COVID happened, Blue Right was in the right place at the right time, and we were already matured and established to do proactive risk monitoring in different geographies where people couldn't go anymore. Travel, ban, and the different restrictions. So we were still able to continue to do our duties. And that also really helped amplify everything. And fast forward to where in 2022, when especially in the US and a few other countries, when the restrictions started to drop, people started adopting these things much more. So for us, just to summarize, I think a lot of it was part of a larger M&A transaction, and every company has their own story of adoption. But for us, I think the collective factors of the M&A transaction, COVID, and the organization itself moving to an agenda of transforming each functional group in different ways to digitize and monetize to help optimize decision making really helped us to basically amplify and propel how we wanted to go.
You said something else in those remarks that I really want to explore because I think it's incredibly important. You said we went to the managers on the ground, not to senior management, although they obviously are part of the discussion and certainly have to support you. But for the true user experience, You went to what I'm going to call middle management, the people who are going to be using that, and more importantly, interacting with the employees who are going to be using this every day. And when many compliance professionals think of a new, shiny, cool tool, they think, as long as I get senior management buy-in, I am good. But you focused in on the level of management that would actually implement. Could you expand a little bit on that? Because you're the first person I've heard talk about the role of middle management in implementing a new data analytics tool.
Yes. For us, it's very integral that our day-to-day compliance officers find what we do very effective. Because what we're really trying to do is make their day and their job much easier. That's the premise. And from a leadership perspective, our global general counsel, our current boss, John Sardar, and the global general counsel, Katie Barrett, and the chief legal corporate officer as well, they all want to see how we can help the zones in making their day-to-day more simpler and more effective. So these are the two keywords, simpler and effective. Now, for us, with the word simpler and effective, what we want to do is we want to see how people are taking their day-to-day jobs and making it much easier. And whether that's doing touchpoint vendor monitoring, reviewing procure-to-pay transactions, reviewing travel and entertainment expenses, or even looking at the trainings coverage, or looking into investigation data. How can we make their day-to-day jobs easier was our key focus. And if you just look at middle management, and we look at the word return of investment, at the end of the day, these are the people who are actually looking at a particular area, identifying the risk, or mitigating a risk. They're the source of a lot of things that get done within the. So it's so important for us to focus on them as audience, is because they're the people who can leverage the tool to the maximum value, and also at the same time provide us great input, because they're closest to the business and the transactions that are happening across the ground to evolve the types of risk we're looking for so we can continue to progress. So for us, the direction was very clear, even from the global leadership, that you always have to bring impact to the zones, and it has to be effective and simple. So the target audience to drive was very clear to us.
Can you say a few words about how BrewRight has evolved? I don't know what the first module was, but there was a first module.
Yeah.
The first presentation I saw, you helped Vince Walden and I put together, and I think there were 8 or 10 modules. But my sense is it's evolved far beyond that, and you even talked about in your current role how you're helping legal preps look at it. So could you talk about the evolution of BrewRight, certainly beyond compliance?
Yes. From a compliance area to start, and then I'll go beyond compliance. To start off in compliance, we did obviously introduce few new areas. So previously we were almost focused on procure-to-pay, touchpoint vendors, anti-money laundering, non-AP payments, and investigations. But something is clear for us. We could bring some core areas of traditional compliance, trainings, compliance disclosure, policies. How do you put that into a traditional compliance analytics? Because for us, the key thing we wanted to do is not have compliance analytics separately and core compliance separately. We want to merge, because our end goal is how can a compliance program be derived to be called a data-driven compliance program to help decision making. So that's our original objective, and we're working towards that objective. So the evolution has really been taking and bringing the compliance analytics very close to core compliance and basically marrying them to really create a data-driven compliance program to optimize decision making. Now, let me also touch upon in the same aspect what has changed from a user adoption perspective. In the user adoption, when BrewRight was built, it was strictly transaction monitoring. So whichever dashboard you used, the user went, selected a transaction by risk score, and then provided feedback in a case manager module to really help our machine learning model train and evolve itself. But what we changed in 2022 is how our users interact with the tool. We today, in just simple things like we're used to the mechanism of receiving that we basically preempt. What I really mean by that, simple thing. I can go to New York Times or Wall Street Journal. I'm interested in a particular topic. Let's say we're interested in sanctions. I can curate all sanctions related articles that come, and I can get an alert in my email inbox about a new article that has just come. We took the same mechanism and we said, if we want to build this in a tool to change the interaction, so if a compliance officer today thinks about a vendor, say vendor XYZ, and wants to see how many times this particular vendor is receiving a payment that's not in the pattern, or a payment that has been processed at close dates between the purchase order or invoice, I get that information in my email. So alert mechanism now, it basically helps our users think forward of a risk, and they are able to put it in the system, and when it triggers, when the activity occurs, they get an email alert, and within the case manager module, they know of something happening. And we can take this as another example, which is close to all of us, sanction. Now, in a large company, you have different types of ERP systems there. But we could do simple things to really help the larger team and say, for example, if our entity in the US is making a payment to somebody in Russia, I want to know about it before anybody else knows about it. So when that payment occurs, there is the trigger and the right people know. So alerts can help in a variety of different ways, but the good thing about it is the interaction of how the user interacts with the system is so different, because you're not looking about things historically, but you're helping the user think about other risks they want to see and protect for the company, and if it triggers, they're right there to help remediate it. So these are the two things we've evolved in Brew itself. And we have one more thing that we've really changed, and this comes to the topic of we are very focused on middle managers in the zone, but now how are we working to basically bring an overview to senior level managers? And this is just the start, and this is to your point, this can be increased to the larger scope in legal as well. What we want to do is to start the different areas of compliance that BrewRight focuses on. We want to really take some inspiration from the Corruption Perception Index, and we want to build something like that internally, and we've really titled this the Quarterly Ethics and Compliance Assurance Report. And what this really does to senior level managers is taking our different regions, whether that's South America, Middle America, Africa, Europe, is building measures with our business leaders in these respective areas and bringing a common measure that we can calculate in each of these compliance areas and having this represented in a world map so we can benchmark which areas are strong in a particular region and which areas require improvement. And in the same way, what we're really doing here is we're enabling the local fields and providing them insights at the same time and empowering them to basically take the right actions for corrections they need to do. So we are very excited about this new thing that we're going to layer up on top of Brew called the KECAR in short, which is they call it Quarterly Ethics and Compliance Assurance Report, to really put it, and this one can now slowly be expanded beyond legal. So for example, you can have your matter management system and you can see the different types of matters that are happening in different places, how many matters, the materiality of a matter. So I'm very excited. I think there's a lot we can do in the digital space. And
I, for one, am going to follow that journey very closely. I am equally interested in that, and I've thought about these applications for legal, as that was my corporate background. Started as in the general counsel's office. I'm very interested in that. Dheeraj, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode, but I was wondering if anyone wanted more information about you or a BrewRight, if that's available, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
Yep. I think the best place is LinkedIn. You could search for my name. You could just send me a DM and I'll respond to you. And also my company email is also on my LinkedIn, so feel free to shoot me an email from there or a LinkedIn direct message.
Dheeraj, I wanted to thank you again, and I hope we can continue this conversation.
Thank you, Tom. It was a pleasure sharing our perspective with your audience.
This is Tom Fox again. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you'll join us again for another episode of Data Driven Compliance. Data Driven Compliance is sponsored by Kona AI and is a special production of the Compliance Podcast Network.